Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. Did you ever wish you could be happier right now? Much happier. That life could be, well, happier in each moment, more puppies and roses, or that at least the sun could be shining more than half the time? Well then, do we have the show for you. Today we'll be talking with Tal Ben Shahar, a former Harvard psychology professor and a leader in the field of positivity and happiness. He's also the author of the best-selling book, Choose the Life You Want, The Mindful Way to Happiness. Today we'll be talking about at least 10 key ways to choose happiness in each moment, plus the power of smiling and why we both did it before starting the show, plus why we might want to forego that new Porsche and instead head for Cabo Pronto. Arriba! Well, welcome to the show, Tal. Are you ready to shine?
Am I ready? Let's do it.
All right. Well, before we dive into things, how in the world did you end up studying happiness?
Well, I became interested in happiness because of my own unhappiness.
Some more research.
Yeah, so I was an undergraduate at Harvard studying computer science of all things, and I found myself in my sophomore year doing well academically, doing well in sports. I played squash, and yet being very unhappy. And it didn't make sense to me because when I looked at my life from the outside, things looked great. From the inside, it didn't feel that way. And then I decided to switch course, and I switched from computer science to philosophy and psychology, focusing on how I can help myself initially and later others become happier.
And did that feel like a lot more of a fit?
Yes, initially I must say it was I was uncomfortable in that area. I was much more number oriented
Oh,
and
yeah, that's one heck of a switch.
but then very quickly I fell in love with many of the philosophers, ancient philosophers, modern ones, as well as psychologists.
So let's jump ahead a few years and let's talk about a little bit about the study of happiness. And am I reading correctly? Was there really a study where they gave you money just to buy stuff so you could buy yourself happy?
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't you want to be part of that study?
Sign me up. Let me get my list.
Yeah, and the results have been were fascinating. So they gave a group of people a nice sum of money, and they told them, go spend it on yourself. Go have fun with it, indulge. And they did, and they bought themselves gadgets or shoes or whatever they wanted. And then they measured their levels of happiness before and after. And, no big surprise, levels of happiness went up. This is the first time in recorded history when you actually have scientific evidence for Carrie Bradshaw's claim from Sex and the City that buying shoes makes you happier. I think that's amazing.
So I've got to ask, what's the stick? What's the shelf life on that happiness?
Exactly. So they brought them in a day later, and they found that there was no impact whatsoever. So Shopper's High lasted maximum a day, and then gone, disappeared. And then they brought in another group of people, and they gave them the exact same amount of money with a slightly different instruction. Instead of telling them go spend it on yourself, they told them go spend it on someone else. So, they could donate it or help someone, whatever. And they experienced the same high as the shoppers did with one major difference. It lasted a lot longer than a day. So after a week, they could still see some impact of that contribution, of that help.
Very cool. So I guess that would bring us to reason number one. We would say act of kindness then.
Yeah, to give. I'm originally from Israel, and my mother tongue is Hebrew. And in Hebrew, the word to give is natan, which is spelled Natan. Natan. That's a palindrome. In other words, it reads the same way from both directions.
Good point.
It's not a coincidence because when I give, I also receive. It's a two-way street. And today we have the data, the research to back up this ancient linguistic wisdom.
Fascinating. So that'd be way number one, helping people. And let's talk then, go from there to being present. You talk about specifically a beautiful story about a designer, a blind designer, Eric. I wonder if you could share that with us.
Sure. Yes. So Eric, it sounds like an oxymoron, a blind designer, but Eric is
And we're
actually
talking like a home designer here.
a home designer. Yeah, yeah. And he's a leading designer who's sought after by numerous clients, designs beautiful homes, and he goes into a place and he describes it this way. He feels the place. Obviously he uses his other senses as well, whether it's smell or touch. But he senses a place, and with that and with the client's help as well, because he speaks to them and feels their reaction to different to different attempts or to different experiments, and he designs a beautiful home. Now, you think about Helen Keller as an even more extreme example. Not only was she blind, she was also deaf, and the levels of sensitivity that she was able to bring to her interactions, to her writing. And we too, we need to use our senses, whether we have all five of
Yeah.
them or not. We need to use them, and to use them, we need to be present. We need to be mindful. Now, the interesting thing about mindfulness is that it doesn't just make us better designers or better writers. It makes us a lot happier. It contributes to our psychological well-being. It also contributes to our physical well-being, strengthening our immune system.
So when you're talking about being mindful, can you go into more depth what exactly we're looking at? And I'm picturing also there's just with Helen Keller an element of gratitude of I'm not taking
Yeah.
for granted what I do have.
Yeah, exactly. I just um, finished a small study and a children's book on Helen Keller,
Hmm.
who is the consummate appreciator. She didn't take for granted what she had. She was grateful for it, and just about at every moment in her life. Now, if we combine being present
Hmm.
and gratitude, that's a very powerful duo, in terms of increasing our levels of happiness. Because, we can also be grateful and not mindful, and that's
Hmm.
not as effective. But being mindful and experiencing what Barbara Fredrickson calls heartfelt positivity, feeling just good in the moment. Again, that contributes to psychological, physical, interpersonal well-being.
I think that can also lead to if people were to put themselves in my shoes on occasion or my lack of shoes, going out walking barefoot and just even going around the block, all of a sudden I'm like, wow, look at that tree. Wow, look at that squirrel. Look at that chipmunk. This is great. Because you're just if you got the gratitude and the mindfulness going on, you're just in the wonderment of it all.
Yeah, and if you really think about it, everything is a wonder. Whether it's that chipmunk or whether it's the fact that, we're talking to one another. I'm in Tel Aviv. You're just outside New York City,
Hmm.
and whoever is watching is wherever they are. So the wonder of technology, the wonder of sight or sound. Um, People think, oh, well, we've really made advances in science and we understand the way things. We don't. We don't even understand how the law of gravity works. I mean, we know it's there, but
Hmm.
why? So, the world is a wonder. It's what Einstein said. He said, there are two ways to look at the world. Either nothing is a miracle or everything is a miracle.
Woohoo!
I opt for the second.
Me as well. And I often look at Skype itself as a miracle.
It really is.
It's working today. Woohoo! So what are some key ways then? Let's jump down the mindfulness rabbit hole because I think this is the crux of things. We were talking off air beforehand and your book goes over 101. It's amazing. 101 different ways that we can experience more happiness and learn how to appreciate things more, but it all comes back to mindfulness. So can you give us some key ways to cultivate this presence for the purpose, in
Right.
this case, of happiness?
Right. So let me draw an analogy first. So if you had asked me, um, so give us some tips about becoming fit, physically healthy,
Hmm.
I would say that you have two options. One is to go to the gym
Yep.
and work out there, or use a stationary bike or whatever. Another one is to cultivate an active lifestyle. Now, they're not mutually exclusive. We could do both. The same with mindfulness. One way the equivalent of going to the gym would be, sitting down, closing your eyes and taking deep breaths,
Hmm.
focusing on the air going in and then going out. That would be the formal meditation. At the same time, just like to become fit, you don't need to go to the gym. You can also just lead a more active lifestyle. We can bring mindfulness to everyday life. And for example, in terms of listening, whether it's right now, listening to this Skype interview, or you and I listening to one another, or listening to your daughter as she shares her experience from school, or listening to a colleague at work. At every moment, every interaction, we can bring mindfulness to it. Now, the interesting thing about being mindful, say, in a conversation, is that it doesn't just contribute to our own happiness and our own physical health, just like every mindfulness exercise does. It also contributes to the well-being and physical health of the person who is listened to. So it's a,
Whoa,
a
back up.
win-win.
I want to hear that one again. Can
Well,
you
you
say?
weren't listening?
Oh no, no, I was being very mindful, but I think this one is a mind bender for people, or it's a mind blower for people.
It's a big one. So there's research
Yeah.
done by people like Osnat Buskilayam and others showing that actually listening to someone contributes to their physical health. Now, we've known for a long time that children who are listened to, their self-esteem is higher.
Hmm.
They grow up to be healthier, happier adults. And now we see it also in the workplace that employees are sick less often when they're listened to by their usually by their boss, but also by their colleagues. By the way, one of the best predictors of people's not just job satisfaction, but also productivity at work is the answer to the question, do you have a best friend at work?
Wow.
And a lot of it has to do with the fact that you have someone to hear you out.
So we get someone to hear us out. We become better listeners. We listen. We become better listeners. We have somebody who can listen to us, which also might mean a dog or a cat.
Well, sorry, there's also research on that, on pets. And of course, having pets contributes to well-being for many reasons, by the way. One of the things is, you take your dog out for a walk, you exercise, you meet people,
Hmm.
which all, of course, contributes to well-being. But I guess also someone, I don't know if someone who listens to you, but someone who you feel that you're seen by, you feel visible.
That makes sense. That makes sense. What would be some other keys? Let's say that we're trying to cultivate that mindfulness in
Mm.
everyday life. A few key ways that we
Yeah,
can do that.
right. So, in the book, I talk about how at every moment in our life we have a choice,
Hmm.
and and it really is at every moment. So it's also cultivating mindfulness in terms of the way I sit, the way I carry myself. So,
Hmm.
work by Amy Cuddy on physical posture, of course, matters a lot. Um, it's when I do the dishes, I can be mindful of, the water. When I eat, I recently participated in a meditation workshop where the teacher had us eat a raisin, one raisin,
Hmm.
for 15 minutes. Um,
Wow.
we smelt it, we looked at it, we, eventually, we put it in our mouth, and we before we even tasted it, we just felt the texture there. Now, this is not something that I'd recommend doing on a daily basis. We won't get anywhere. Not very high return on effort there. Um, but even if we spend 5 minutes at the beginning of each meal, or even one meal a day for 10 minutes, just absorbing those smells and tastes, we'd not just enjoy the meal more, we'd also begin to eat more healthfully. We'd be more mindful of what we ingest.
I lived in France for a few years, and the pace with which they would eat dinners at first was painstaking, to say the least. And then I actually came to appreciate it over time. And we're talking, instead of a 5 minute meal or a 30-minute meal, you're talking a 2 or 3 hour endeavor.
Right, right. And yeah, and again, it doesn't have to be every day and 3 times a day.
Hmm.
We wouldn't get much work done. But we can do it even a little bit more of the time. And this is the wonderful thing about the meditation work. Yeah, you can go out and meditate for 8 hours a day for, going on a 6 month retreat. And that would probably make a significant, enhance your levels of well-being in a significant way. However, even just 10 minutes or 5 minutes a day of meditation, of mindful eating, of mindful listening, that in and of itself can go a long way.
So I want to jump into choices here in a second, but before I do that, I want to hit one that I think you bring up fairly frequently, and it's one that I think about a lot as well, which is posture. So I wonder if you can be up nice and tall and talk to us about posture.
Yes. Okay. Give me a minute. That's a lot better.
Okay.
All right. So research by Amy Cuddy, who's a Harvard Business School professor, has shown that people who assume a posture, either what she calls a high power pose, which would be something like this, chest up,
The rooster.
shoulders back, yeah, or or sitting like this, feeling very good about yourself. High power pose. 2 minutes of that reduces levels of cortisol, which is the stress hormone, and increases levels of testosterone, which is associated with self-confidence and self-esteem.
Let me back you up for 1 second. For people who couldn't see it, the second pose, you had your hands behind your head, up behind your head with your elbows out to the side. I would call this almost like the CEO pose. They're leaning back in their chair. You're coming into their office, and they're like, all right, little one, what do you want now?
Yeah, I call it the big shot pose.
Say that one more time.
I'd call it the big shot pose.
Yes, the big shot pose.
So,
and you're saying that it changes our chemistry.
Yes, increases your testosterone levels and reduces your cortisol levels. You become more confident, less stressed. On the other hand, low power pose, which would be the opposite of, so it would be, sitting down like this.
Yep.
Or
shoulders together, rounded forward.
Exactly, or with your hand, protecting your neck, sort of demonstrating lack of confidence. Sitting for 2 minutes like that actually increases cortisol levels, which are your stress hormones, and decreases your testosterone levels, which is your self-confidence and strength.
Fascinating. From a hunter, predator-prey perspective, I don't know why this popped into my head. When you put your hands in front of you like that, I felt like you're a deer in the woods waiting to be pounced upon.
Right. And there are evolutionary reasons why you would do that. You're declaring that I don't want to fight. I came in peace. But when we do it, on a regular basis, when we're sitting in front of a computer, and the way we very often sit in front of a computer is hunched forward. That's actually not healthy certainly not for our backs, but also not for our psychology. It's a lot better to sit up straight, and if you need to type this way, or once in a while to get up and stretch, your hands up and so on, can make a big difference to our psychological well-being.
So let's go from here to some more everyday choices that we can make in the moment, whether it's getting cut off or whatever, choices we can make to make us happier at that particular second.
Yes, so for me, one of the big ones, and as I see it, it's really the foundation of positive psychology, which is the science of happiness, is what I've come to call the permission to be human. And the permission to be human is about allowing ourselves to experience any and all emotions. Because one of the mistakes that many of the self-help books, gurus, advocates make is that they talk about the possibility of being happy all the time. And what that means is having no painful emotions.
It's also a setup.
It's a setup for failure because there are two kinds of people who don't experience painful emotions, like anger, sadness, envy, disappointment, anxiety. Two kinds of people.
Dead.
The first kind are the psychopaths.
Okay.
And the first kind, and the second type of person who does not experience painful emotions is dead.
Yeah.
So experiencing these emotions is actually a good sign. it's not a psychopath and alive.
You've
Work
got
with
a
that.
pulse.
Yeah, you're
Yeah, you,
right.
you actually you talk about in your book one that I think it was you who experienced with your 1 month old, was it 1 month old son?
Yeah.
And you were very honest in sharing there. It's a real human emotion you went through.
Yeah, so I experienced envy toward my, toward my child. Why? Because for the first time since my wife and I had been together, here was someone who was getting more attention than I was, and no matter how much I cried, right? So that led to feelings of envy. Now, the thing is, there were two ways to deal with that emotion. One way was to reject it.
Hmm.
Now, there's a lot of research showing, and we don't need research for that because all of us have experienced it, that when we try to reject the emotion, so if I said to myself, I don't feel envy, I don't feel jealousy. How could I? This would be horrible. And if I continued along that path, that emotion would have actually intensified.
What we
And
resist persists.
yes, and not only that, it would also exact a high, not just psychological, but also physical price. So there's work
Really?
by John Sarno from
Hmm.
NYU, who's a medical doctor, showing that a lot of the back problems that we have are as a result of suppressing certain emotions that we're unwilling to accept. So, for example,
Hmm.
me experiencing envy toward my son, whom I love so dearly, that can happen, and I suppress it. It has to come out in some way. And the way it very often comes out is it goes to the weakest link. And for many people, the weakest link is the lower back. So that manifests itself as backache. And on the other hand, when I let it out, when I express it, and I say, okay, I'm envious. It's part of being human. I'm neither a psychopath nor dead. Uh,
I'm
then
okay. I'm
yes,
human.
yes, I have a pulse, as you say. Then it actually it goes away. I allow it to flow through me
Hmm.
and out of me, and then that leaves space, openness to also experiencing the wonderful emotions. Because if we block the painful emotions, we're inadvertently also blocking the pleasurable ones. Because emotions flow through the same pipeline, and if I block one set, I'm blocking the other.
Wow. So we actually have to be open to experience that. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, an experience could be crying. Experience could be sharing with
Hmm.
others. Experiencing could be writing about it. We choose our favorite method.
There's a back surgeon. His name I'm just going to space at this moment. Who has an exercise where he has you write down your negative emotions, write down whatever's bothering you, and then you tear it up and you tear it up into many little pieces and you put it in the trash can.
Mm,
So you got it out. You,
yes,
you got it
right.
out. Oh,
After first acknowledging it.
yes, you have to acknowledge it first, or else there's your back problems again.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's talk about getting lucky. And
Mm.
specifically characteristics of a lucky person, because I found this fascinating.
Yeah, I must say I did too. So this is by Professor Wiseman, and as his name suggests, he is indeed a very wise man, and he was very interested in the phenomenon of luck.
Hmm.
Why are some people luckier than others? And some of it has to do with good fortune. You were in the right place at the right time. But what he identified were actual psychological characteristics, a way to approach life that makes some people luckier than others. For example, the people who are luckier actually believe in that they're lucky, so it
Hmm.
becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Another thing, they're much more open to being surprised. In other words, they're much more mindful. For example, they could two people could walk in the street and one would be open and look around and suddenly see, oh, there is a $10 bill. Oh,
Woohoo!
I'm so lucky. Well, because you were open
Hmm.
to that luck, and it happens in 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 more important situations, such as relationships. I'm looking for a person whom I'll fall in love with. I'm much more likely to find that person than if I close myself off and don't put myself on the line or in situations where I may meet such a person. So you can attribute it to luck, or you can attribute it to, raising the chances of that happening
Mm-hmm.
because of my behaviors. Another thing that lucky people do is they interpret events more positively. So this was an interesting one. So when lucky people, for example, break their hand,
Yeah.
they would very often say something to the effect of, I'm so lucky because I could have fallen on my head. That would have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
Whereas unlucky people would say, oh, I'm so unlucky, I fell on my hand. And that ends up leading to more lucky or unlucky experiences, depending on interpretation.
So, geez, I want to stay on that topic, but it segues so perfectly into being a benefit finder rather than a fault finder, and your history with squash.
Mm. Yeah, so the benefit finder is is a term that I got from Henry David Thoreau, who wrote
Mm-hmm.
about it in the 1840s, and he said um, he talked actually about the fault finder, which is its opposite, and he said the fault finder will find faults even in paradise. And the same idea applies to benefit finding. We can find benefits in just about every situation.
Mm-hmm.
And what I did and what I talk about in my book is how the exact same situation can be interpreted in two radically different ways. So, one example would be from squash. When I was in my late teens, early 20s, I got injured, and that
And you were
unfortunately.
a national class player, I believe. If I was,
Yeah, I played professional squash, and that was my life. I remember at the age of 16 actually having that thought and saying, "What am I going to do with my life once I can't play squash anymore?"
Mhm.
I mean, there was nothing else that interested me, certainly not to the same degree, extent, intensity. Um, and yet I got injured, and the doctor said, it's over for you, and that was devastating. Now, looking back at it, one way to interpret it, the injury de decimated my squash career. It ended my dream, which was to be, to continue being a professional player, to be one of the best in the world. Um, Instead, I can also interpret it by saying, I'm fortunate because as a result of that, I became much more interested in academia.
Mhm.
That's the reason why I went to Harvard, because I didn't turn to be a professional squash player, and there I discovered my passion, which is psychology. Or another and other examples in my life would be failures that I had, whether it's academic failures or
And
not
we'll
getting
put that in
the work.
quotes.
Um,
Failures
no,
in quotes. No.
no, no. They're real failures because when they happened,
Yeah.
they were very real. They weren't in quotes. They hurt, and some of them, whether they made me cry or very disappointed, or
Hmm.
um, so they were very real. And yet, without them, I wouldn't have learned certain lessons. When I have a group of people in class, I ask them to do the following, and I say, think about the most important experiences, the experiences you learned most from in your life. So, I give them a minute for that. And then I say, okay, now put your hand up if it was a painful or difficult experience. Over 90% will give them.
My hands up.
Yeah, so, if we think about them, when they happen, they hurt.
Hmm.
Their disappointments, failures, whatever they are. But a benefit finder uh, learns to, in the long term, find benefit in these as well. So when many people say things happen for the best,
Yes. Or
and
everything happens for a reason.
or everything happens for a reason. Well, or everything happens for the best. I don't completely buy that.
Okay.
But what I do buy is that while things do not necessarily happen for the best, some people are able to make the best of things that happen.
Ooh, I like that.
S- and the benefit finder is able to do that. And I must say, I'm not a naturally born benefit finder, so I'm much more of a pessimist, but it's something that can be learned.
So, and what have you done personally to kind of rewire or catch yourself in that moment?
Yes. So, um, two main things
Hmm.
that I do, or three main things. One thing is that I teach it, and by teaching it, I'm reinforcing it.
Yeah.
Second, writing about it, so that there's a lot of work on journaling and how important that is. And the third thing that I do, and I don't just do it for that, I do it for many things that I want to introduce into my life. I have reminders around me. So whether it's I have pictures on my wall, or whether I wear a bracelet. I
Hmm.
almost always wear a bracelet, and this bracelet reminds me of certain things. So, for example, until recently, I wore it to remind me just to return to the here and now, to be present. And now, specifically, as of yesterday, I have something new that I want to be reminded of, which is to be more playful.
Yay.
Because I've been traveling a lot and busy and distracted, and just be playful. So the reminder helps embed desired behavior or approach.
Do you do mental, like self-talk, reframing in the head when you catch yourself?
Yes, and more now than in the past because I catch myself more often. So, for instance, when I'm feeling down, and then on top of feeling down, I say to myself, "Come on, you're feeling down. You're the happiness professor. What's going on
No
here?"
pressure.
And then exactly, and then immediately what comes to mind? Permission to be human, not a psychopath nor dead. Or when I'm with my kids and my mind is elsewhere, at work, what I do is I remind myself, return to the present, being the here and now. It's
Hmm.
such a privilege to be spending time with them. So yes, I mean this voice exists, and at the same time, it's also important to let go of the voice and just be.
Makes sense. So going back to the fun side of things, you have chapter 25 in your book, bringing humor and lightness, and you even talk about Norman Cousins.
Mm. Yeah, so Norman Cousins is, it's the first time when people really started to think about the healing power of humor, and he healed himself from what doctors thought was a chronic disease. He healed himself by prescribing humorous activities, whether it was watching sitcoms or telling jokes, and the power of humor is just remarkable. Um, and the thing today is that we have humor accessible to us literally at our fingertips. So I can go right now and on YouTube look for my favorite comedian,
Hmm.
and just laugh. The thing though that we need to keep in mind about humor is that one of the things that kill humor is uh, two things: distraction and being too busy. You know,
Mm.
um, so one of my favorite comedians is Ellen DeGeneres,
Hmm. Oh,
and
she's great.
she's amazing, and so positive, and also combining it with dance. Again, a great duo, dance and humor, a winner.
Which you talk about. There's a video that I recommend on your website that talks about. See if I get this right. The wonder drug and exercise, and you talk about dance in there.
Yes, that's right.
So everybody
Yes,
should go. This is a shameless plug for your website. Go and check that out.
thank you. So Ellen DeGeneres talks about too busy disorder, TBD. Too busy disorder, which you said, so many of us have. And that's one of the things that really, unfortunately, kills playfulness and humor. So it's important. That's why it's so important to do less rather than more,
Hmm.
to shed off layers of busyness.
It sounds like we need a drug for that TBD.
Well, soon it will be on the shelf.
It won't just be restless leg. It's, are you doing too much? Then do we have the drug for you? They used to call it a hammer, but oh my, which is another one, humor and laughter. So you talk about being optimistic. And I found this fascinating. And I've been a running coach for years, so I've seen this firsthand. Roger Bannister and the mile, and when you change, when you shift what you believe is possible, how everything shifts.
Yeah. This is something that's very difficult for us in the West to understand, to fathom the mind-body connection.
Hmm.
How is it possible that just when Roger Bannister ran the mile in under 4 minutes, suddenly the same year dozens of people ran the mile in under
So
4 minutes
if
after.
you're not a runner, 4 minutes is considered the miracle mile. It was this threshold, sort of like the sound barrier, that they're going. All the physiologists, all the guys with the fancy titles are saying your heart will explode. Something will happen. You can't get past 4
The
minutes.
limits of human ability.
Bingo.
Yeah. And yet Roger Bannister does it, and
Who was a med school student.
yes, back in 1954, and suddenly everyone's doing it, just because they started to believe that it's possible. And we see it in education, teachers who believe that the particular students are the best students in class. These students actually become the best, even though they were randomly picked out of a hat, and the teachers were actually lied to about their potential. We see it with athletes. One of the best predictors of success is, do you believe that you can do well? We see it even with the effect of placebo drugs
Hmm.
that can have healing impact, just like real drugs, just because there is a belief that they will work. So it's our mind is a miraculous thing.
So how do we go to shift that belief? And I'm thinking of kids now because, well, I know growing up for myself, my mom had us IQ tested. I came out with one number. I was on one path, my sister on another number. They put her on another path. And so you were given somebody else's belief, and then they're treating you based on that belief, and you're actually wiring yourself based on the belief. So then how do you flip that around?
Yeah, first of all, it's not easy, and the way as a society that we need to deal with that is through the system of education.
Hmm.
And again, Robert Rosenthal, who was a professor at Harvard, in his very famous Pygmalion in the classroom experiments, showed that if you tell teachers that students have high IQs, even if they don't, these students begin to perform in according to these expectations. So first of all, we need to get teachers to really understand that basically each and every student has the potential to be a lot smarter than their performance would suggest.
Hmm.
So that's the first thing on a system level. On an individual level, the best way to increase, well, two best ways that I can think of right now to increase our abilities. One is to focus on the things that we are already good at, or
Okay.
the things where our strengths lie. So, for example, if my strength is in writing, I want to focus on writing. If my strength is in crunching numbers, that's what I want to focus on and do a lot more of it. And that will increase my overall levels of self-confidence, and I'll perform better in different areas, not just in crunching numbers or in writing. So that's one area. The second area, and I go here to the amazing work of Carol Dweck
Oh,
from
yeah.
Stanford. So she does work on mindset, showing that how our mindset, whether it's a fixed mindset or a growth mindset, affects our performance. So if we believe in the growth mindset, which is I can learn, I can grow, I can develop, then that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I
Hmm.
actually grow, develop, and learn. If I think that it's fixed, that I was born with a certain IQ and that is not going to change, then I remain fixed. That too becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So we've got to be real careful to be in the watch those prophecies.
Yes, watch those expectations.
Yeah. So let's dive into a little bit more of the fun side of things here. The fun side of happiness. There's a funny way to put that. Why shouldn't we get the Porsche and instead take a vacation? Specifically, chapter 21 of your book, you talk about the value of experiences over goods and how
Okay.
that can have a lot
Yes.
more of a lasting bite to it.
Yes. Yeah. So, when you ask most people, if you had the choice, you buy, let's say you get a bonus at the end of the year, you can buy a new car or go on a family vacation or
Hmm.
vacation with your friends. What do you do? Most people would say, well, I want that new car because that new car will last me for years to come, whereas vacation, it's over in a week.
Hmm.
Well, it turns out that most people are wrong. That 1 week vacation actually overall increases our levels of happiness much more than the car. Experiences contribute more to happiness than things do.
Is it, can you look at this in a sense as if I don't even know what the perfect example is. I want to think of a computer maybe. And each experience is putting in a software. You can put in one piece of software that gives it a certain level of happiness. That's one experience. Another one raises it more and more until you've got this bursting happiness machine where there's, if you just get another mouse, it hasn't affected the happiness at all. Or,
Yeah, I think it's a nice metaphor to use. Um, which is related to the way it actually works on a psychological level. You see, because every experience is not just defined or confined to the time during which it takes place, but it has a trickle effect. So that vacation
hmm.
will have a trickle effect. Will affect, in your metaphor, the rest of the system, the rest of the computer. It will affect, the week after as well, because you've become closer to your family or to your friends, and that will also affect the week after because you'll also remember, think back to that experience, and that will have an upward spiral impact potentially on your life. Much more so, it turns out, than um, getting more things.
I think you've inspired me here because what I'm hearing in the back of my mind, and many people listening may also be hearing this, which is we should shoot for more experiences, more positive experiences, any chance we can that's going to add to a level of fulfillment.
Good. Exactly that. And I
Yep.
would add to that, it doesn't have to be that incredible trip around the world or even that 1 week vacation in the Seychelles. It can be small experiences, such as going, right now and having a conversation with your friend or partner or kid and consciously, mindfully bringing positive energy and appreciation um, and savoring to that experience. So it's the small things that can make a big difference. Once again, because they can spiral up potentially.
Woohoo! Speaking of spiraling up, the importance of dreams. And I must applaud your parents.
Mhm.
Send them all my love because they did great on this one.
Yeah, so my parents, if there's one thing that they did was they indulged me when it came to my dreams. So they took my dreams or my brother and sister's dreams very seriously. And again, that's related to something which we spoke about at the beginning, which is listening.
Hmm.
They listened to my dream. They didn't discard them or say, "Oh, that's not that's a kid. Let's move on." They really listened and they were there with me, and that made me as a kid take my dream seriously as well.
Beautiful. So, what would you say is, or what do you mean by leading a spiritual experience?
Yeah. So when it comes to spirituality, um, the most significant element is uh, the experience being a meaningful, purposeful one.
Hmm.
A monk who's doesn't see his work as meaningful is less spiritual than an investment banker who sees her work as important and significant. So that is the element that makes our life, our experiences spiritual. And now finding that purposeful or spiritual in our life doesn't have to be in those very great experiences or big aha moments or special moments even in just about every moment in our life, we can experience the spiritual in what we do. We can experience it in our interaction with our best friend. We can experience it in when we think about the impact, the potential impact of our work.
And as we wrap things up, Jessica always likes me to ask a question about kids. What can we do to be cultivating this more in our kids?
First and foremost, lead by example. Ultimately, kids do what we do rather than what we say.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a win-win aspect here that when we cultivate, when we work on our happiness through all these activities, through the choices that we make, not but by directly pursuing happiness, because directly pursuing happiness can actually be counterproductive, but rather doing things.
So chasing after happiness isn't going to make us happy?
No, it actually potentially will make us less happy and perhaps even lonelier. But going for those choices that we know contribute to happiness,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's sitting up straight, whether it's expressing gratitude on a regular basis, whether it's exercising regularly, whether it's spending time with people we care about and who care about us, whether it's being present and being mindful when listening or when washing the dishes. When we bring all these activities into our life, when we give ourselves the permission to be human, when we do these things, we become happier and we also indirectly affect our kids.
Woohoo! Well, any last words of wisdom that you want to share with people?
It's the small things that make a big difference. When people think about pursuing happiness, they often look for that, one or a few life-changing activities or things or even experiences.
Mm-hmm.
But the happiness is in the details.
So it's those minute-to-minute decisions we make that make all the difference. They're much bigger than those few big life choices. Do I go to this school or that school? Do I move to this town or that?
Yeah. It's those small choices that we make, and it's those small experiences that we fully experience. There's a wonderful book by John Kabat-Zinn called "Wherever You Go, There You Are." So it's being present to the experiences, the good ones as well as the painful ones. Being present.
So a last wrap-up question I have that we have for all of our guests, which is, what brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
For me, it's spending time with my family and friends,
Mm-hmm.
hands down.
Woohoo! So where can people go to find out more and to find your book?
Well, it's my books are on Amazon or
Mm-hmm.
Barnes and Noble,
Mm-hmm.
and also my website, which is talbenshahar.com.
Fantastic. And we'll have links and more information on this interview on our InspireNationShow.com website as well, so we can drive them over your way. So I want to thank you so much for being on the show. This was so much fun, and working with us with the time zone difference. So good morning.
Good evening. Thank you very much.
So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, choose the life and happiness you want, and shine bright. Woohoo! Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you.
This was wonderful.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also leave your comments, have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, InspireNationShow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!